"90 years ago, the Virginia Farm Bureau made our local farmers a promise to protect and preserve a way of life they work so hard to establish. Today, our insurance agents work to protect all Virginians, not just farmers. We want to keep Virginia, Virginia." More information is at farmbureauadvantage.com.
Hi everybody, welcome to Virginia Farming. I'm Amy Rocher. Today we travel to Floyd County and visit with equine journalist Tom Moats. Then Mark Vietta's tips on getting rid of an invasive plant when we go in the garden. We'll also have the Ag Calendar, a Minute in the Field video, and of course your Ag News of the Week, all on this edition of Virginia Farming. Last weekend, Rockingham County Fairgrounds hosted nearly 400 4-H and FFA members at Market Animal Boot Camp. The event was started a few years ago to help kids learn more about showing market animals. Last weekend, classes in showmanship, clipping, and even animal nutrition were presented. And the kids didn't just learn about showmanship, many actually purchased their market animals that day as the event concluded with a live auction of hogs, lambs, and goats. One thing's for sure, all those animals are going to need veterinary service at one time or another, and several rural counties in Virginia lack adequate access to veterinary services for food supply animals such as beef, cattle, and sheep. The USDA is accepting applications for loan repayment grants for veterinarians willing to serve in those parts of Virginia with moderate to critical shortages of food animal vets. Visit the web address on your screen for more information on the application process. VDAC state veterinarian Dr. Richard Wilkes said many farmers face a critical shortage of vets, and this loan award program is designed to give assistance to vets so they can help improve the health of livestock and ensure a safe food supply. Well, in all regions of the country, cattlemen are improving the quality of their herds to meet growing consumer demand. In this segment, we hear about improvements in southeastern cattle and how the whole beef community can keep on the upward trend.
Cattle are widely adaptable to thrive in various climates. But regardless of those characteristics, consumers want one thing: consistent, high-quality beef. And they're willing to pay for it. Animal scientist Larry Cora says calves from the traditional Old South have greatly improved, to the credit of area producers.
Well, the southeastern part of the United States is a very important part of the country in terms of number of calves produced, and a big part of the beef industry in terms of their contribution to the total supply. Historically, southeastern cattle probably had some negativity associated with them, and maybe fairly or fair or unfair. But that has really changed in recent years. Producers in that area have done a tremendous job of improving the quality of those cattle. So when they're hanging on the rail, the quality grade is so much better than it used to be 10 and 15 years ago.
Most of those producers are only involved in the first half of their calves' lives. Then they send the cattle west to be fed and become part of the beef supply.
So it's often easy to forget about the things that are down the road. You focus on health, you focus on getting cattle that can grow, but you tend to forget about the fact that these cattle need to grade, they need to hit that prime and premium choice like the Certified Angus Beef program to qualify for the added dollars.
The choice premium in February was about $12 per head over select at most plants, but $45 more for premium choice, or another $150 per head for prime. That's why Cora encourages producers to use all the available tools to keep making improvements.
They also need to focus on genetics, and that can be as simple as just when they're using bulls, make sure they pay a little attention to that marbling figure, that marbling EPD value, to make sure these cattle, when they hang on the rail, will ultimately do what we hope they all do. And so it's really just managing some of the little things that can ultimately lead to some added dollars.
I'm Bob Cervera.
Thanks, Bob. With the lowest prices since 2010, it's predicted that Virginia's dairy industry faces a tough year ahead. Statistics from the first 2 months of 2016 indicated that milk prices were the lowest they had been since the same time in 2009. Prices paid to dairy farmers for cheddar cheese, non-fat dry milk, and dry whey were all down the first quarter of 2016, and butter prices were up just slightly. Energy costs continue to be erratic, and labor and health care costs continue to climb, which will likely tighten margins for our farmers. On a positive note, feed prices are down, so the milk-to-feed price ratio looks a little better than it did, and experts expect that trend to continue. Virginia's dairy industry contributes $3.2 billion to the economy each year. Tom Moats is a leading equestrian journalist and author. Today we visit with Tom at his home in Floyd County and learn about this award-winning journalist with a unique writing style. That's straight ahead on Ag Insights. Today we are in the Appalachian Mountains and we're visiting with equine author Tom Moats. Tom and his buddy Chief here. Tom, give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Well, Amy, I'm an equestrian author and journalist and also a horseman. I write books. I've got quite a few books out, and I also work for most of the major horse magazines in this country and a couple overseas in England and Australia as well. I was a writer, and I was obsessed with writing. Then I got obsessed with horses in my 30s, so I started later in life than some people. And now the horse obsession met the writing obsession, and that was really when the writing career kind of took off for me.
Is your background horses? Did you grow up on a farm?
I grew up on a dairy farm, so if anything, my background is cattle.
Okay.
But I did not have a background in horses. I had fed some along the way. I had ridden a couple times. And as my first book, which is called Discovering Natural Horsemanship, it begins with this ad in the paper that my wife saw, quarter horse Amish trained. And that's a horse that we ended up bringing here. I'd been married for a decade when that happened. And so we brought that horse home. That horse's name is Niji. He's still here with us. And that kind of was the beginning of the horse thing for me.
So what publications do you write for?
Well, I'm on the masthead at Equus magazine, which a lot of people are familiar with Equus. I contribute all the time to a really cool magazine called Eclectic Horseman. It's a magazine put out in Colorado. It's a subscriber-based magazine. And what I like about it so much is it's not really a glossy magazine. It's a magazine that's dedicated to people trying to improve their horsemanship. So there's a lot of information and material that gets in there that's, maybe not as sexy as it would be in some other magazines. I also write for the American Quarter Horse Association magazine. So America's Horse, the membership magazine, the American Quarter Horse Journal. I'm frequently in those and really enjoy quarter horses. So that's just one of my loves. And I've been in Western Horseman frequently, just quite a few others. Just a lot of the major horse magazines I've written for over time as a freelancer, but those are the major ones I'm writing for now.
But you also have a series of now 5 books. What is that series about?
All right, I've got a total of 7 horse books out and a series of 5 that's sort of my best known work. The series is an ongoing memoir of my experiences of trying to improve my horsemanship with the guidance of my mentor, the patient guidance of Harry Whitney, who is a horsemanship clinician based in Arizona. Harry's been traveling for about 3 decades, and so the horsemanship that I've learned really has come directly from his teaching, and then I've put that into practice and basically ended up with more wrecks, more questions, things like that. And more experimentation. So as I've gone through that, I've put that down honestly on the page for other people to read, and so it's kind of the books I wish I could have read when I started out and when I was at different points along the journey. Just try to be real honest about the difficulties, and each chapter is kind of a lesson. So you pick up in the beginning, and there'll be a wreck or some trouble that I had, and then how I got that sorted out, or maybe sometimes didn't get it sorted out, but how I improved my horsemanship, picked up another tool for the toolbox of horsemanship. That's what those chapters are about, and I didn't intend to write 5 books about that, but that have it's just grown. It's just grown out of the experience. Yeah, I felt the need to put it down, and people have responded to it amazingly. It's been a real blessing to be able to put those out.
Well, the latest book in that series is called Passing It On. What's that one deal with in particular?
Well, somewhere along the line I got to the point where people started asking me questions about their horses here locally, and I started working more and more, so I finally started doing that as sort of a side business, you know, going out and helping people with their horsemanship. I do some day clinics around Southwest Virginia here. And that book is called Passing It On because it's about the point in my experience with horses that I realized I could pass some of this knowledge on to other people. I mean, I always kind of thought of myself just as learning about horsemanship, and I still feel that way. But, you know, I realize now that, you know, I have so much to give back to other folks. So that book is really about my experience of starting to give back and what's involved with that.
And hence the title, Passing
Yeah,
It On,
hence
right?
the title. The cover is a shot of my grandson, Jake, who was 7 at the time, and the horse Niji, and me walking kind of away to put him up, and Jake's leading him. So it's kind of the perfect image for what that book is about.
Right. Now, aside from riding, you also train horses too, right?
I do, yeah.
All right. So tell us, how did you get into that?
And I don't know that I'd call it training so much. It's a term I stay away from because I think people think of trainers. They think of trainers that work with horses that are going to show, going to compete. That's not what I do. What I do is I work with people with their horses in the environments where they have their own horses. So I don't bring horses in here. And what I think I do is I help people with the relationships with their horses. So whatever issues people might be having, we work on trying to get their horse better with them, better communication going. So it doesn't matter about the discipline, doesn't matter about the type of horse. It's really about that
The
relationship.
interaction with the owner and the horse.
Yes.
Well,
So I travel to them often.
Okay.
Instead of people coming here. You know, I'll do clinic days. There are groups of people that get 4 or 5 horses together, and we'll go out and make a day of it at a place that's maybe a 2-hour drive from me, something like that.
right, and then people come to you that way.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. So is working these horses a constant learning experience for you?
Yeah, absolutely it is. I don't go out and work with other folks and their horses that I don't learn something new, see something maybe I knew one way that presents slightly differently, you know, and so I'm always growing as a horseman. And I think with horses, there's so much in there that is a potential. How do I say this? You know, we don't really teach horses things. We unlock the ability for things horses can do to be done with people, right? We don't
So we
teach
can kind of understand the way they think a little bit, maybe?
Yes, yeah, maybe. For instance, you know, we talk about, teaching a horse flying lead changes. You watch a horse in a pasture, you see that happen.
Right.
We don't teach it. The thing is, can we come together and have that lead change occur while we're on their backs, that kind of thing. All the things horses can do already exist within the horse. All the things people can do already, you know, with horses already exist within us. How do we bring that out? How do we get the horse to do it? And really a lot of what my learning is about is not even getting things going with the horse better, but getting them going where the horse can do them in a relaxed way. So much of the trouble we see with horses today, anywhere, on the trail, in the show ring, when they deal with people, is tension coming in the horse. And it causes, you know, a lot of issues between people and horses. And so a lot of what I do is really to learn how to improve the relationship between the horse and the person so that things can be done together and in a relaxed and happy way with the horse as well as the person.
Absolutely. How do you think your method of working horses is different from others?
Well, the huge thing that is different, that is noticeably different is, and I get this from Harry Whitney, my mentor that I learned from, you know, this is straight Harry Whitney, is working with a horse's thought. The first book in the series is called A Horse's Thought for that very reason. I had a book before that called Discovering Natural Horsemanship, and that was really about just the very beginning when I first started learning about horses. And I don't consider it part of the series, although I think some people might. And in that book, I was going to all the different natural horsemanship people trying to figure out what was going on. And I was an equestrian journalist, so I had access to these people. I could interview all the guys on top.
Everybody. Yeah.
And in the course of doing what I call a roundtable discussion, where I'll take a topic and talk to a lot of different clinicians about it, it was actually about what they call picking up a soft feel in a horse. It's a term that gets kicked around a lot. And I spoke to Harry because a friend of mine had seen Harry's clinics. And it just was instant. It was so different to me. The way Harry took great care to try to explain to me, to choose terms, to try to talk to me about things. And he talked about a horse's thought, and I had not heard anyone address it that way before. And essentially, to put it in maybe a quick way to discuss it is, if you don't have the thought, well, you don't have the horse. And so many people want to address what the horse's body is doing. Well, if the horse is thinking about doing something, he'll take his body himself and do that thing, right?
Right.
So if you want a horse to look off in one direction, you should be able to just suggest that with a finger on the rein and the horse come through because he understands. We don't need increasingly aggressive bits.
Right.
We don't need mechanical devices to make our horses acquiesce to our wishes, to be obedient. What I want is a willing partner. And to get the horse's thought in line with mine, the rest kind of comes together easy. If the horse is thinking about going backwards when you ask him, he'll go backwards. I don't
Right.
have to get aggressive about that.
Sure. Your books contain a lot of humor. And you say it's really important to have a good sense of humor when you're working a horse. Why is that?
Well, I think you'll find that the humor in the books a lot of times is me laughing at myself. and I think that's really it. If you get too serious trying to do something with your horse, it's easy to take things personally that you shouldn't. It's easy to get angry and bring emotions. And when people get angry at horses really don't understand that. If anything, it makes them dubious of people. So if you can just step back and laugh at the situation, laugh at yourself. And I get letters from people and they say, thank you for writing these books. And as a writer, to me, that's about the most important thing I could get, the most wonderful thing. People could say, oh, they're very entertaining, I enjoyed your book, whatever. But when they say thank you for writing the books,
Right.
because, and they say that often because they felt like they were the only one that had these problems.
ever had done
they
that,
felt like
right.
the only one that had these issues, and so by bearing all, including things that are pretty darn funny sometimes,
Right,
I have to
right.
admit, I think it has helped other horse people that read the books feel that they're not off track. That it's something that we all have these troubles when we're starting out, and people care about their horses so much
Right.
that they don't want to do the wrong thing. They don't want to set their horse back. They don't want to ruin their horse for good. These are all emotions that I had when I first started working with
Well,
them.
I think you write with emotions and you write with honesty. And I think people can much more relate to that than someone saying, oh, this is how you do it and never do this, always do
Right.
that. Well,
Yeah, and when I first started publishing the books, I think there were no other books like that out there. There are plenty of books with people saying, this is my program, this is how you do this. My books are not how-tos
Right.
by any stretch of the imagination, but there are things that people can pick up both on the page and between the lines. There are lessons in there. Every chapter is a lesson, but usually I'm the one trying to learn it.
right. But
And
you
the
know
reader
that if
comes
you're trying to
along.
learn it, there's someone else out there who's doing the same thing.
Yeah, and I've had wonderful emails from people and wonderful response from the books. It's just a blessing to be able to
great.
to do that as a living.
Well, if our viewers want to find your books, where do they find them?
Well, the books are available anywhere that you buy books, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. They're also available through my website, tomoates.com. And also, the first book, A Horse's Thought, is available as an ebook. So that would be available at, in Kindle, at Barnes & Noble, on Nook, on Apple, all those places. But the other ones are not out yet. We hope to have them out soon as ebooks.
Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye out for them.
All right.
Tom, thank you so much for having us up here today. It's been a pleasure.
Well, Chief and I are glad y'all came, and we're glad it was such a beautiful day. Thank you for coming.
We'll be right back. The tree from heaven probably has the wrong name. It's invasive and hard to get rid of. Today, Mark Viette has tips on keeping this invasive tree at bay when we go in the garden.
When you're traveling down the interstates, you might see this tree behind me. It can get 80 feet tall. This tree was brought into the United States to become a quick-growing shade tree. You know, they needed to bring in trees. This is one that was recommended. It, at that point in time, was called the tree from heaven. It's also known as a Chinese sumac, and botanically, it's known as Ailanthus altissima. But we're finding out it's probably not the tree from heaven. It's a tree from somewhere else. This tree produces seed pods that spread all over. And it is a tree that really has given problems to farmers. It grows along fence rows, and it spreads very quickly, and it is difficult to eliminate. I'll tell you, you would think by looking at this tree, well, I'll come in and I'll cut it down. Cutting it down makes it worse, and I'll show you in a minute what that does. Last year, I started resurrecting an old vegetable garden, trimming the garden, trimming some of the trees, and lo and behold, right in the front here, I have this so-called tree from heaven. That tree there is probably about 5 years old. What I did last year was prune some of the side branches and little trunks so I could have an easier time cutting it to the ground. What I found this year was all the way out here and beyond me, all these shoots are coming up from the roots. So if we had 8 or 9 long roots produced from this tree, all along each of those roots, there are new shoots coming up. Right in front of me here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 new shoots coming out into growth from this tree here. What does make it a little difficult is if you need to treat this tree, which we'll talk about in a minute, with a weed killer, and once you've cut the tree, there's no way to treat these little new shoots, so you have to individually treat each of them. This spring I was looking for a workout, so I decided to go out in the garden and hand dig these tree from heavens. What I found is that where I dug this young tree from, again, 12 feet from the tree, all these shoots started popping up. And this is a young one. 2 years ago, I pruned a tree about this size, and I cut it in 8-foot lengths. I laid the logs on the ground, and the logs started sprouting new shoots. This tree is something that none of us really want in our garden. And there's only a couple ways probably you want to deal with this tree, and I just recommend that you go online to find specific chemicals, but pretty much if you tried to remove this even with a backhoe, all the roots are going to produce new plants. So what you're going to want to do is treat this tree with a recommended chemical that not only kills the tree part you see here, also kills the trunk and also kills the roots from the trunk. And keep in mind, many weed killers work the best in the fall. In the spring, all the nutrients and all the sugars that have been stored all spring long flow upward into the tree. But in the fall, all the nutrients and sugars that have been produced by this tree travel down and go into the roots. So if you're treating it with a product, the product can go farther out into the roots and give you less problems into the future. I'm going to tell you, I don't think this is the tree from heaven. This is the tree from hell. I'm Mark Viette. Join me next time in the garden.
Taking a look at the Ag calendar, VSU is sponsoring a nutrient management bus tour May 24th through the 26th. This tour of Northern Virginia, West Virginia, and Western Maryland will take participants to see a variety of niche markets on small farms. Space is limited and there is a $50 registration fee. More information can be found at agriculture.vsu.edu. That does it for our show. Thanks for watching and have a great week. I'm Amy Rocher for Virginia Farming.
90 years ago, the Virginia Farm Bureau made our local farmers a promise to protect and preserve a way of life they work so hard to establish. We want to keep Virginia, Virginia. Anyone can be a Farm Bureau member, and there's a local Farm Bureau in every county. More information is at vafarmbureau.org.